Everyone, you can see me at beyondblockpunch.com or sayyeh.com, SAYYEH.com. Today I just wanted to talk about something that's been kind of bugging me, and it obviously has to do with being trans. I accept myself and I'm totally comfortable with who I am, that's not the point. But I did want to clarify for people who don't understand what it's like to have a trans history and trans journey, is the fact that if you're a cis person, you're just going to go through life not questioning your gender, and you have your regular life struggles, but that's it. For trans people, we have that, but on top of that, one of the biggest differences between trans people and cis people is the fact that we have this inner voice dialogue, self-policing thing going on, because from a very young age, even if we transition early, we were beat into the closet momentarily, whether for decades or for several years early in our life, before we realize, hey, we're not the gender that the doctor or our parents assigned us at birth, and we have to figure things out. And in the process of doing that, we learn to look for the third gotcha, which can come up at any time. And many of you have probably know about the joke, and I've mentioned in my previous posts, but I'll explain briefly what the third gotcha is. It's basically this joke where Tiger Woods is challenged by some schmuck at a golf course, and he's like, hey, I'll play you for $1 million, and Tiger's like, you're on. And the guy's like, well, I want 3 gotchas as a handicap, and Tiger's like, I don't even know what a gotcha is, but you're on. So they go to the first hole, and Tiger's about to swing his club, and the guy comes from behind and grabs Tiger in the balls and goes, gotcha, and Tiger misses. And they go to the second hole, and Tiger's about to swing again, and the guy comes from behind and grabs him in the balls and goes, gotcha, and Tiger misses again. And then they finish, and the club owner comes up to Tiger and goes, hey, did you teach that chump a lesson? And Tiger's like, no, I paid him $1 million, I lost. And he's like, how'd you lose? And Tiger was like, have you ever tried playing the remaining 16 holes waiting for the third gotcha? And that's basically what it's like to be trans in a lot of ways. You can be the most beautiful, passable trans girl, and that's another insidious word, being passable. I've talked about that in my other posts, I'll leave that for another time. But basically, it's like a woman is only supposed to look a certain way, and if you look even remotely masculine or have male features, which we do as trans women, we're biologically male as sex, but our gender is we're a woman, you can't undo a lot of the things that happen to you in puberty. I'm always going to have a low voice to some regard. I'm always going to have the bone structure I have. But to say that those who don't pass, you know, all of a sudden are lesser women, or, you know, even if you do pass very well, you might have to talk about something you did in high school right before you transition, or let's say you transition in your 30s and you're at a current job and some, you know, vendor or whatever from a previous job from before you transition visits the facility, and now you have to explain something. Or people ask you what you were like, what your childhood was like, or who'd you go to prom with, and how come you don't have a husband, assuming that just because you're a woman you're dating men, and you may be still into women after your transition. There's so many ways where the queerness doesn't show up on the radar, and then you have to explain. And for me, here's a couple of examples of where self-policing and the inner voice came up, and I had to really be careful. The most recent one, for example, was when I was at work. And granted, I'm not always the hardest worker at work, but there's been times where people have said something, a coworker will say something, and I don't know if it's because I'm trans that they're being mean to me, or if it's because it's just something else. And if I was a cis girl, I wouldn't have to worry about that. I would just be like, well, you know what, this guy's a dumbass, I'm just going to move on. But then I start questioning things on top of what cis people question. I have another layer of, oh, it might be because I did something or I said something that's, you know, triggering him. And I have a specific coworker I'm thinking of in mind right now. I'm not going to mention his name, where, you know, I posed in front of a Ferrari with some really sexy shots, and I showed some people some really professional photos that were taken of me a couple months ago, and this one coworker just lost it. And it's like, I could tell the third gotcha had hit me, and it was just like a ton of bricks that I didn't expect, because I was cool with him for several years, and we've worked together fine in the past. But as soon as my picture turned him on and he knew about my gender history, he just fucking lost it, and he couldn't compute, and he wanted me to go away because I'm what triggered him. So instead of dealing with his own feelings, he wanted what triggered him to go away. And another good example is a couple years ago, I went on a date with this baritone singer, famous guy in LA. I'm not going to name any names, I'll let you guys figure it out. But this motherfucker told me he slept with other men before, and that he predominantly dates women, but he's bisexual. And then I thought for sure that he knew that I was trans because he met me through a trans friend. And then we went out to dinner and hung out a couple times, and then on our second date, he started reaching over to hold my hand, and I said, hey, I pulled my hand away and said, look, I'm not sure if you know, I think you do, but I just want to be honest and transparent. I'm a trans woman. And he got weird the rest of the night, kind of made a scene at the restaurant. I was really embarrassed. I let it go. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to see him again. But then I go home, and 2 days later, I get this long 3-paragraph, email on Facebook, berating me on how I deceived him and how I was this, dishonest person. And it just boggled my mind that he would even go through that much trouble to write something like that. And for him to use the word deceive, no. I convinced you I was a woman because that's who I am. And you couldn't handle the fact that my history is different than another woman's history in a way that you deemed unfit. Because every woman's history is different, even twins. But he didn't want to value that individual aspect of my history. He just wanted to put me in this category where it made him uncomfortable, and again, I got cast out. And another situation where it happens for a lot of us in the community is when we go to the doctors. We're already sick or there for a reason to get checked out for whatever ailment we have. And needless to say, we're already kind of stressed out because we're not feeling well, otherwise we wouldn't be there. And then now you got to add on top of that, you're filling out questionnaires, you're filling out stuff. And even after you're done filling out the clipboard, sometimes the nurse comes in and goes, okay, Natalie, and she clicks the pen and goes, when's the date of your last period? Very standard questions when you have a female patient. And I tell them, well, I don't have a period. And then they go, oh, well, some of them don't even look up from their clipboard. They just, without missing a beat, because they see patients all day, obviously. It's no offense on their part. But they just stay with their eyes focused on the clipboard, and they go, well, when was your hysterectomy? And I go, I never had a hysterectomy. And then they look up all bewildered, like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And then I go, well, you see, da-da-da-da-da, and I explain my trans history, and they go, oh. And, as flattering as that is, because they think I'm a cis woman, I'm born female, it's nerve-wracking for people like us, and I don't expect non-trans people, cis people to understand that, because it's something they don't have to go through. And another time my queerness showed up in an unexpected situation was when I was gassing up, and it was 9:45, and this 76 station near my house closes all the time at 10 o'clock. So they're about to close, and I was going inside to get my change. I rarely pay by cash, but I did that night, and the guy behind the counter gave me my receipt, and he goes, hey, do you live nearby? And I was like, yeah, why? All suspicious. I didn't really want to say too much. And he was like, well, because I get off in 15 minutes, I'm going to close up, and if you want to come back, I was wondering if you could blow me behind the counter. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, give me a blowjob behind the counter. And I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, did I offend you? And basically, I thought about it later on. I left, but I thought about it later on, and I realized this guy spotted the fact that I'm trans and immediately assumed that, because most trans women he's probably seen in his lifetime hasn't been in the real world. We are so afraid of being spotted out sometimes, we just live stealth, or we don't really talk about it unless it comes up. He probably saw most of his trans people or interactions were all through a one-way interaction on video of pornos that he watched. And he just assumed that, oh, I see a trans woman, she must be freaky, so let's get our freak on. This could be my chance to get a free blowjob. And it's just crazy. And not that it doesn't happen to cis women, but I'm sure the queerness upped the factor where he could then say, oh, well, I'll just throw, a level 9 queer came in here, so if I throw out my 6 or 7, I'm still not the queerest person in this dialogue. And the final example I want to tell you guys is even with the pets, it's shocking. So prior to me transitioning, my brother's dog, my brother and sister-in-law have this dog that's always barking. Very sweet dog though, but always barks when guests enter. And you have to stick your hand out and let the dog like sniff your hand, and the dog will calm down. The dog met me many times for years. And then I transitioned and I was on hormones for about 6 months. And then when I finally met the dog again, the dog was like barking at me again. I was like, hey, you know me. Come on, what's going on? And I was talking to the dog and trying to scratch his ear, but it kept lunging at me. And then I realized I must smell different because I'm on hormones now. So the dog had to get reacquainted with me. And so even in those type of situations, a mini gotcha will come and wash us over like a little tsunami, and we realize, you know what? We go through a lot of things that cis people just don't. And for that, I'm both grateful, and it's humorous, but a lot of times it's also quite taxing, to be honest. So anyways, thank you for listening, and I'm glad I could share all these tidbits with you. And you can see more of my stuff at beyondblockpunch.com. And until next time, everybody be safe out there, and see you soon. Bye.